This woman grieves for her 5 children who died 2 months ago. 2 months ago, the people of southern India suffered the greatest natural calamity in that country for 100 years. The disaster struck on the 19th of November 1977.
The water came at us and it rose and rose. Everyone near this temple ran to it and clung onto the walls. Many of us rushed inside and hung onto the rafters. People were holding onto my arms and onto my chest. We were all in a state of panic. But although the water swept over the temple, those of us inside were saved, and that was because of the truth of our God.
But God was selective. Driven by the cyclone, the tidal wave swept inland in the late afternoon. It was dark. In breadth 30 miles, in height 20 feet, the wave penetrated 15 miles, turning a rich delta into a raging sea and destroying everything in its path. 2 miles from the coast in Dimbleby, the villagers rushed to their school as the wave approached. 100 people crowded inside. But the wave swept over the building and the sea filled the room. There, more than 50 men, women and children drowned. Those who clung to the outside were torn away and perished. The cyclone was relentless, a gale of 135 miles an hour whirling across the state. In its path, 7 million victims. 630 villages. The wind alone destroyed 500,000 homes. 2 million people without a roof to protect them. With greater effect, the water of the tidal wave washed away more than 100 villages. The people clung to the roofs, to trees, but were swept away as if in rapids. Entire communities drowned. Communications destroyed utterly. The survivors fled. Two months on, the fires still smoke in the ruins, burning the debris of the dead, their bodies, and the remains of their broken homes. And death still haunts Andhra Pradesh. No one knows who they are or from where they came. It was almost impossible to escape. We're standing here some 4 miles from the sea, and this hamlet stands 10 feet above the surrounding land. But the tidal wave came in at a height which covered those palm trees, and those who escaped did so only by clinging onto the top of that roof. The survivors rescued the remains of a ruined crop. This is the rice bowl of southern India, destroyed. The wave came and went within 2 hours, but the water stayed for 10 days, and it was harvest. Their last year's work was washed away, and next year's soil is poisoned by salt, dead. The ritual of the season, as much as the hope of a few good grains, keeps the peasants picking in oblivion, even inches from the decomposing corpse of a dead infant. These peasants live 9 miles from the sea. The tidal wave destroyed their hamlet and left 25 of them dead in the pond from which they once drew their fresh water. The bodies remain there, just beneath and sometimes just above the surface of the salt water. The trauma remains. This woman sits in the ruins of the house where everyone took shelter against the wave. 49 people, 9 survivors, not her husband nor her children among them. In village after village, it is the same. We're standing now on the highest house in this hamlet here, to which everyone rushed before the tidal wave came. How many people survived in here, and how many people were swept out and died? Can you ask them?
ఎంతమంది ఇక్కడ బతికిన ఉన్న వాళ్ళు ఉన్నారు, ఎంతమంది బయటికి వెళ్ళిపోయిన వాళ్ళు, చచ్చిపోయిన వాళ్ళు కానీ అక్కడ బతికున్న వాళ్ళు కానీ?
చెట్టు కట్టుకుని ఏలాడుతూ ఉన్నాం, ఏలాడితే వెళ్ళిపోయి ఆ చెట్టు.
There are about 135 people who have swept off and they are dead. And there are about 10-15 people who have come back, surviving in other places, like that. And there are 3 people who have got themselves caught with this sort of log there. And one
in the log down behind there. And they were saved.
They were saved.
When we look around at the houses here, the house over there in the corner in front of the palm trees, how many people died in that house?
ఎంతమంది ఆ ఇంట్లో చచ్చిపోయినారు? ఆ ఎదురుగా ఇప్పుడు దిబ్బ ఉంది చూడండి, ఆ దిబ్బలో ఎంతమంది చచ్చిపోయినారు? అందరు చచ్చిపోయినారా? There were 4 people in that family, where in the place they were staying, and all of them have died.
What about over here, this house over behind us here?
మొద్దున్న చోట ఎంతమంది ఉన్నారు? ముగ్గురు. There were 3 people who are already, all of them have died.
All of them have died. Yes. What about the house immediately behind us with the posts sticking up there and the pieces of wood there? Just
తాడి దగ్గర ఉన్న వాళ్ళు ఆ ఇంట్లో ఎంతమంది పోయినారు? ఆ తాడి దగ్గర ఉన్న వాళ్ళ ముగ్గురు. There are 3 people who have died from that place.
3 people died.
Yes. All the 3.
So the whole village was completely devastated. The whole life of the village has been destroyed.
Mostly, all the people have died.
Can you ask this lady here, does she try to put the flood out of her mind, or is that very difficult to do?
నీ ఉద్దేశంలో ఇప్పుడు ఇది వచ్చింది కదా ఉప్పెన, అది ఇంకా మనసులో తిరుగుతుందా? దాన్ని బయటికి పెట్టాలని ప్రయత్నం చేస్తున్నావా లేదా?
వస్తుందని రావట్లేదు అనుకునే మేము ఇంట్లో ఉండిపోయాం.
They didn't know that there's a flood coming, and the moment the water came, the husband asked her to go and climb on the roof,
top of the house.
And then after that the flood was driving them off. So she somehow caught a hold of that log, and so she was saved. I feel she is not out of that. She's not getting that.
I mean, you think that all she's thinking about is what happened,
because she is still with the same thing in her mind.
Is this? Is this?
Narayana Narayana Allahu Allah Ma Palitu Tandri.
Some escaped and have been whisked away from their memories. These children have food in abundance, clean clothes, blankets.
Matamannadi ma manusuku mabbaite.
They are the orphans of the tidal wave, sheltered by the Gandhi Peace Foundation, protected from their tragedy by the discipline of Gandhi's thought. For the moment, in charity, they are secure.
Allahu Allah Hinduulamu Muslimulamu Andarmu.
Their future? Will relatives claim them and take them home? Or will a parent who lost them in the flood and presumed them dead perhaps find them? Or is it to be an orphanage many miles away?
Narayana Narayana Allahu Allah Narayana Narayana.
The survivors that return are refugees, living in camps on the edge of their villages. These people lived on the edge in normal times. Poor fishermen, small farmers, casual labourers, exploited unmercifully by powerful landlords, whose great fear now is that the victims will emerge from this crisis to challenge the past and demand a new life from a society in which they are always victims. But as yet, they need not fear. The disaster wrought by the cyclone is immeasurable. A fragile society is shattered.
I was here not only from the day of calamity. I was working among these people from almost 2.5 years, and the effect of the calamity on the people is really terrible, we should say. because first one thing is that they are completely afraid. The fear which has settled in the mind of the people is really something unimaginable. There are people without hope and people who are in fear. They have lost everything, which I mean they didn't have. Of course, most of them didn't have anything previously. But what little they had, they have lost. Their people, their wives, children, parents, and the home, livestock. Even their own village, they have nothing to say that this is our village even. Even that has been washed off completely. And so in that situation, we can expect a complete breakdown of psychological balance.
And that has been?
That has been.
In a sense, what you're saying is that because the disaster now 6 weeks on is not better and is continuing, it's in fact getting worse.
That's right. In fact, it is so.
Relief there has been, in abundance. Of a simple kind, medicines, clothes, pots and pans, lamps, blankets, given by the government, by private citizens from all over India, by groups and organizations, from abroad, from all over the world. It was offered with goodwill and distributed in chaos. But relief is for the moment only. It permits survival, but doesn't restore life. Neat plastic packs of cooked rice are received with grace but humiliate the victim. These people of Hamsaladivi were poor before the cyclone, but fought for themselves. To huddle in obedient lines for the indignity of mass charity is to be kept in your place, unable to fight. Dazed by the past, afraid of the future, you await your turn but don't escape. Distribution is haphazard. All families get the same, large or small. So some have too much, some too little. In this district alone, tens of thousands of survivors have come to depend upon relief. Food queues, anxious faces, always waiting.
Children one. Otherwise they won't be able to take them. Hey Shiva.
As my opinion about this is the total approach which has been adopted in the overall relief material is totally wrong. Wrong in the sense that it is making people more and more submissive. Submissive in the sense that there is no mass involvement. Mass involvement in the sense that people are not being involved in the normal activities. People are not being, this is precisely because people have not been so far provided with the means of subsistence. If they are provided with the means of subsistence, they will be involved in the normal activities.
What in this village, for instance, do you mean by means of subsistence?
There is a specific example of this village, if you can take this, the nets and the boats. The people have not been provided with the nets and boats, but simply they are being fed. And in that sense, they are becoming more and more passive.
Do they buy the nets ready-made, or do they make the nets themselves?
వలలు తయారు చేసినవి కొంటారా లేకపోతే మీరు మీ అంతకు మీరు they make it on their
They make it themselves?
The stage beyond relief is rehabilitation. Agencies from India and abroad step into the almost unknown. What do the victims want? How do they live? Who works on what? What do they earn? What do they need? What does it cost? What is normal life? And there are dilemmas. If normal life is usually oppressive, should you raise money to reconstruct oppression? Or can you help change? Or should you do nothing? But then life will be worse. No simple answers, only careful questions. And the fear that dramatic action deepens disaster. Instant action there has been. Clear the land. Tear down more trees, which ought to stay up. Don't, ask the people, get rid of the rubbish and promise a new world. It is tempting for outsiders to bulldoze in where angels fear to tread. Religion in crisis. The sincerity of these holy men is not in doubt. Their invitation to the village to be born again in the Hindu faith is quite natural here. But their promise to build a new village in brand new reinforced concrete to resist cyclones raises questions that they've not seen fit to answer. They tell the people concrete, and concrete alone will secure their future. But it isn't quite true. The Minister of Relief for Andhra Pradesh arrives to lay the foundation stone of the first concrete house. The minister spends much time touring the stricken area, and with reason. Next month, he must defend his seat here in the state election. The contest will be bitter. His Congress party, which has long ruled the state, is threatened here by the coalition which now runs the country, Janitor. And rival politicians use the disaster to blame each other for the misery their electors endure. The minister does not descend to such tawdriness, but his administration is paralyzed by the election. It allocates money, promises action, but publishes no plans, takes disconnected decisions, and hopes for the best. Housing the victims is an election issue. Safe houses are people's dream. These are cheap, simple to build, and resist cyclones. Concrete costs much more, but seems safer, and has the government's blessing, could turn the election. So these houses, built to last, will be pulled down when the concrete goes up.
They are also contemplating to construct 10 community shelters, Pakka shelters, along the coastline.
Not only Tata, TDD also.
40 days after the disaster, the first meeting between the government and the voluntary agencies whose help the state welcomes and needs. The agencies have no common policy and little unity except in frustration. They need a government plan for action, and so far there's none. Housing spurs their discontent. The government gives grants, but only for concrete. The agencies are politely aghast.
But there is only one point against our proposal, that is, people might think that a few have been chosen for the more permanent and more attractive houses than others. But that's always the case in life. In life, a few get better things than the rest, and this is one such.
But sir, if I may humbly add, the consequences of that is for the government, in effect, to sanction RCC housing over all other forms of housing, traditional or brick or what have you. The government in effect is saying that the only safe house is an RCC house, and ergo, your house, the house that 99% of the population is going to live in, is unsafe.
Your point is well taken, Mr. Gray. I do agree with you. I go along with you when you say that you could. But as I told you, for some reason or other, the government has announced this policy, and there is no going back about it.
The deliberations and delays do little to reassure the people. What is the situation now with their food? Are they getting regular food? We want more food, more clothes, more medicine, more work. Please help us. Out of fear, self-abasement. What hope, can you ask, do they feel about the future? Without hope, without means of survival, they fear they'll be forgotten, abandoned. And you can understand the fear. The activity on the land is a delusion, the crop almost without value. And the fields, some 300 square miles, are poisoned with salt. They must be washed clean before another crop is planted. The next harvest is this time next year, and those who farm this land are poor, already in debt after a cyclone last year, now with nothing, and they must start all over again, almost too much. Yet, it must be done. And to wash the fields, the canals must be cleared. thousands of miles blocked with debris polluted by salt. But the peasants can return to work only when sweet water flows here again. The government knows it well, has promised the funds and expects the people to get on with it. It's not so simple. Some are at work. Piecework for 4 rupees a day. Hired by contractors to clear the main canals. 4 rupees barely buys food for the family. The contractors have government tenders and will make much profit, and the people know it, and are now reluctant to work while there's relief. It's almost a silent rebellion. So it'll take time to clear the canals, and the longer it takes, the longer the emergency runs. Scarce water brought by tankers now sustains scores of villages, and the scarcity grows. Even where relief workers have cleaned wells and ponds, salt water seeps in as sweet water is used up. And it'll get worse until the canals are flowing once more. And there are still hundreds of filthy wells, and thousands of people without clean water, and therefore great risk. Bad water and poor food is a dangerous combination. No milk now, nor vegetables, just the handout rice. Even less protein and vitamins than usual, more malnutrition, more sickness, and always the prospect of an epidemic spread among weakened people by a plague of flies. Given that the health is always very much of a problem in an area like this, what are the special problems that you're trying to deal with now?
Now we want to prevent these epidemics of cholera, gastroenteritis, such things.
Cholera, gastroenteritis.
All waterborne diseases. So because of houseflies with this gastroenteritis may be spread like anything. So we want to prevent. We are taking all sort of measures to prevent this.
The feeding continues. Government rations and relief from private agencies. Everyone would like to stop it. But until there's enough work, until the government has a plan which gives frightened people the hope that there's a future for them, until the agencies know what they can best fund, until that time, the relief must continue. At this meal, for the first time, all castes, Brahmins with untouchables, sit together as they died together. A new unity that needs a future. For the moment, only those who live off death have picked up the threads of life. The bone men are back at work, collecting the remains of the tragedy, remains which should become fertilizer, which should feed the crop, which should be sown when the canals are cleared. The disaster of 2 months ago endures. The survivors still sit and wait, only their memories fully alive.